Naz Farahi from the beautiful climate of Los Angeles to today's beautiful climate here in Fayetteville. And again, we'll get started in just a minute or two as people arrive. We want to welcome our guests who hopefully are joining us from the Architecture and Design Network community in Little Rock. Also want to welcome those guests of the larger Fay Jones Schools alumni community, and very much welcome all those attending through our association with the Places online journal for architecture, landscape architecture, and urbanism. Really fantastic partnership that is underwriting both last fall's lecture series as well as this spring's lecture series. So again, we're just waiting another minute or two before we formally begin introductions and welcomes. I think we'll probably begin by my timekeeping in just another minute, maybe even 3 minutes past the hour, as the numbers are really growing quite steadily. Continued welcome to everyone as you're joining in. We will start in another minute or two in the hope that our numbers continue to increase for this afternoon's lecture. So I see we're at 175 and still counting in terms of audience participants. That to me is a well-filled room. If you think of Schollmeyer Auditorium, where we typically would have our lectures in person, the seating limit there is 199. So we're well on our way to filling our auditorium virtually. And again, just one more minute before we begin properly. Okay, I have just turning to 5 minutes past the hour, and with that, I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design's Spring Public Lecture Series. This is the March 1st edition. And as we begin, word of welcome from myself, Peter McKeith, the Dean of the Fay Jones School, on behalf of our faculty, our staff, and our students. We begin, as we usually do, with acknowledgements and gratitude expressed to the multiple partners who make this public lecture series possible. In particular, we are joined this year by the University of Arkansas Office for Diversity and Inclusion. We thank them and their great team for partnering with us. We also are partnered with the Little Rock Centered Architecture and Design Network, and our good friends there, June Freeman, for instance, as well as Patty Opitz, and many others in the ADN who join us from Central Arkansas. And then more generally, nationally, even internationally, we're very pleased to continue our association with Places Journal, really the world's foremost online journal in architecture, landscape architecture, and urbanism. And I recommend the Places website to you. I want to thank our friends there at Places Journal for that association. Last semester's lecture series, as well as this semester's lecture series, has been made possible in part by a generous gift from Fayetteville residents Ken and Liz Allen, who have been benefactors of the school in many ways over the last 6 or 7 years. but this year have expressed particular commitment to the school's efforts to build diversity, equity, and inclusion through our public programs, through mentorship programs, and through scholarship programs. So thanks very much to Ken and Liz Allen for their generosity. As always, we want to further acknowledge the role that tribal communities of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and the greater region have played in the history of the University of Arkansas and the history of Arkansas. And as we look in this frame south, across the campus, towards the Boston Mountains, it is important to be conscious of the presence of tribal communities over many, many thousands of years. And with that, I will pass to a reading of the school's land acknowledgement statement. The indigenous history of the land the University of Arkansas campus sits on goes back to time immemorial. And across that expanse of time, many successive groups have lived here and created sacred legacies in this area. The Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design acknowledges indigenous peoples were forced to leave their ancestral lands, including the Osage, Caddo, and Quapaw nations with ties to Northwest Arkansas. We further recognize that a portion of the Trail of Tears runs through our campus, and that the Cherokee, Choctaw, Muskogee or Creek, Chickasaw, and Seminole nations passed through what is now Arkansas during this forced removal. We therefore acknowledge all indigenous teachers, researchers, and all other residents in our community and region today. We seek continuity and connection to the past as we look to the future with increased collaboration with indigenous governments and entities. We say to the citizens of indigenous nations, we see you and we thank you. And thank you all again for your attendance this evening. We will move through a sequence of further introductions, beginning with Brian Holland, Assistant Professor of Architecture and the Public Lecture Series Coordinator, to give us a sense of where we are in the lecture series, what we can expect in weeks to come, and following that, the proper and full introduction to this afternoon's guest lecturer. Professor Holland, please.
Thank you, Dean McKeith. As the semester advances, we continue with a series of exciting programs this semester, lectures, workshops, and a symposium that are intended to help us to continue interrogating the roles that design students, educators, and professionals can play in shaping the spaces of a more equitable and just future. In a time of great collective urgency, what projects, histories, and ideas have shaped the built environment as we now know it? And what concepts, critiques, and practices must we consider in our own determined efforts to improve it? So we continue the series with tonight's lecture by designer, creative technologist, and critical maker, Benaz Farahi, for whom Assistant Professor Jisoon Lee will present a fuller introduction in a moment. Next Monday, March 8th, will be a lecture by this year's John G. Williams Distinguished Visiting Professors, Teddy Cruz and Fauna Foreman, whose work is deeply rooted in the trans-border communities of San Diego, California, and Tijuana, Mexico. Of note for the school community is a workshop that Teddy Cruz and Fauna Foreman will deliver on Thursday, March 11th from 4 to 6 p.m. So please be on the lookout for more info about that workshop very soon. Following that then, on 2 consecutive Mondays, March 15 and 22nd, we will host the Piggybacking Practices Symposium. This virtual symposium, which I have organized as part of my ongoing research, will assemble an array of innovative architects, urban designers, and scholars for a 2-part conversation exploring piggybacking practices in relation to contemporary forms of inequality in the built environment. Participants will include Georgine Theodore of Interborough, Mason White and Lola Shepard of Lateral Office, Jaffer Cole and Evie Diamantopoulos of New Affiliates, and more. So stay tuned for more information about the symposium, which has a website launch coming in the next day or two. Then on Monday, March 29, we will host Mia Lair for a lecture about her design and advocacy work. She's the founder and director of the Los Angeles-based practice Studio MLA that integrates landscape architecture and urban design. And finally, on April 5th, Pascal Sablan, founder of Beyond the Built Environment and the creator of the Say It Loud exhibition series, will deliver the final lecture of our series, discussing her efforts at highlighting contributions to the design of the built environment by women architects and architects of color. So thank you for being with us today. And on behalf of the Faye Jones School, Places Journal, and the University of Arkansas's Office for Diversity and Inclusion, we look forward to seeing you again for each of these upcoming lectures. So now, as ever, I'll pass it briefly to Byron McEwen for a note about our continuing education credits.
Good afternoon, all. Just a couple reminders. Please submit your questions to the Q&A and not the chat. It just helps us keep up with them for the moderators and everyone to make sure that you get your questions answered. If your question isn't answered live, please still submit it because we will send those to the lecturer. As far as continuing education credits go, we have been approved to offer credit for this lecture, so please answer the survey afterwards with your full name and your membership ID. If you don't see the survey, please feel free to email me. You should have access to my email via your Zoom invitation. And as always, all of our lectures are recorded. They are available to faculty and staff, or to faculty and students first, but we will have them publicly soon. Thank you all. Enjoy.
Thanks, Byron. Now I'd like to invite Assistant Professor of Interior Design, Ji-Soon Lee, to the Zoom podium to provide an introduction for this afternoon's speaker. Professor Lee.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ji-Soon Lee, and I'm an assistant professor in interior design. Okay, Dr. Benaz Farhi has been trained as an architect. She's an award-winning designer and critical maker based in Los Angeles. She holds a PhD in interdisciplinary media arts and practice from USC School of Cinematic Arts. She explores how to foster an empathetic relationship between the human body and the space around it using computational systems. Her work addresses critical issues such as emotion, perception, and social interaction. She specializes in computational design, interactive technologies, and digital fabrication technologies. Her work is part of the permanent collection of the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. She has also been exhibited internationally at Ars Electronica, Linz, and Context Art Miami, and has been featured in several magazines and online websites, including Wired, BBC, CNN, The Guardian, Frame Magazine, and many more. Dr. Farhi has won several awards, including Innovation by Design Fast Company Award, World Technology Award, and she is the recipient of the BASA and Med Workshop grants and the Rock Hudson Fellowship. She's also a co-editor of an issue of AD, 3D printed body architecture and interactive futures. She's an assistant professor at the Department of Design, California State University, Long Beach. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Benaz Farhi.
Thank you very much.
All yours.
Thank you very much, Ji-Soon Lee, for the great introduction and for inviting me to be here. Thank you everyone for joining. I have to say that it's a great honor to be here. And I also want to say that I'm very touched by Peter's introduction to knowing a little about the history of indigenous culture. So I'm very excited to know more about it. With that, I'm going to share my screen. And I thought that it would be first good to give you a little background of where I come from. I'm from Iran and I moved to United States in 2011, about 10 years ago, to study my second master's degree in architecture. And after that, I worked for a few months in architecture firm, worked on various architectural projects. And then I pursued my PhD in interdisciplinary media arts and practices at USC. And in the last few years, I have developed series of prototypes, interventions that I'm going to present with you today. As someone who's been fascinated with tactility, texture, and movement of materials, I've been wondering how computational systems could be embedded inside the substrate of the matter. as though materials could become machine and machine could become materials. But perhaps a new type of machine, an emotive machine, or what I would like to call them emotive materials. And what I mean by emotive materials is materials that they're inspired by nature in order to address larger psychosocial issues such as human emotions or bodily perception or social interaction. And in this nature is a fascinating inspiration, not only in terms of just its form and its morphology, which is absolutely fascinating. Sorry, I am realizing that my screen wasn't optimized for the video, so I'm going to share this slide again. Apologies for that. Nature, it's a source of inspiration, not only just in terms of its form and morphology, which is absolutely fascinating, but also in terms of its intelligence in responding to both internal as well as external stimuli. So I'm really fascinated to see how materials of the environments could be embedded with some sort of intelligence in responding to their surrounding environment. And I started exploring these ideas initially because of my background in architecture, in architectural scales. I was fascinated to explore how the built environments could become soft and active and dynamic and shape-changing and respond to occupants and their users in a reciprocal manner. So I started building series of architectural installation with series of interactive walls that change their surface and their morphology in response to interaction with users. For instance, we use our hand gesture for various communication purposes, either for communicating with each other or with controlling our devices. So I've been really fascinated to explore how these ideas could be applied to the scale of architecture, and how could we interact with the surface of the environment through the use of our gestural, natural interaction. I also started exploring similar idea, not only by not only in terms of just standing in one location, but I was really fascinated to see how the form of the architecture, like in terms of a robotic ceiling installation, could naturally and intuitively interact and physically reconfigure based on interaction with the users. In this case, a Kinect motion capture camera tracks people's movement and activity of the people underneath the ceiling, and according and the shape of the ceiling change and respond accordingly. So the aim was really to see how we could develop a sort of a reciprocal relationship between the human body and the form of the physical form of the architectural space. However, these ideas didn't just stay for me in the world of architecture. I was really fascinated by the work of cognitive scientist and philosopher Andy Clark and his notion of extended mind, in which it really explored how the technologies could be populated around the human body and work as an extension of one's body. With this, I started questioning that where is the boundaries of body? Is the boundaries of our bodies is our biological skin, or is it our biological skull, or could be extended to non-organic materials? So this is Synapse, is a neuromorphic helmet that responds to brain activity of the users. So it uses EEG technology to track and monitor the brain activity, and based on those activities, the helmet moves and responds accordingly. So one of the intention of this piece is really to question and really think about the boundaries of the body. If we can control an object with the power of our mind, could we claim that that object is part of our body? Because if we can control our finger or part of our body through the direct control of our brain, we easily say that that is part of our body. So for me was this question that how much we can push this, and if we have biometric sensors such as EEG technology that allows us to control non-organic object, could those objects be considered as a part of our body? I also have explored this in terms of co-edited issue of Architectural Design magazine called 3D printed body architecture, because we have noticed that a lot of architects, including Neri Oxman, Francis Bitonti, Nicola Casas, and many groundbreaking architects, and their work has been not necessarily for architectural construction, but they have used their skill sets in a different scale, which we call it as a form of body architecture or a form of proto-architecture. So part of this type of work is looking at, and in particular, my work is looking at developments of new material developments in which I'm looking at a variety of computational design in order to control the material properties. So in these examples and prototypes that you're seeing, through the use of algorithmic design tools, different prototypes and different material properties have been carefully designed from soft to hard materials. And also in this type of research, I'm looking at variety of actuation systems such as a smart material and use of shape memory alloy, soft robotics, and variety of actuation systems to more conventional actuation systems such as the use of motor and servos and conventional actuation systems. The intention really is to see how the materials of the environment could become active and dynamic and reconfigurable and change in response to their surrounding environments. And through the use of microcontrollers and the world of physical computing, I'm interested to see how we can give it an intelligence in responding to their surrounding environment. Specifically, I'm inspired by a skin system such as scales, feathers, hair, and I have developed a series of projects that basically they attempt to show a better understanding of both morphological as well as behavioral principles behind these systems. For instance, in these prototypes, you could see that it's inspired by fish scale system, which is not only a hard material, but the distribution of materials and how they're located on semi-flexible mesh system allows the surface to move and morph in certain directions. So part of my research is looking at material properties, as you saw in the last videos, but also I'm interested in material geometry. In other words, a lot of time, having access to advanced computational fabrication technologies such as multi-material 3D printing is not always easy. So part of my research is looking at how we can use cheaper materials, such as, for instance, SLA technology, but it still is very fragile material, but use that fragile material in order to provide flexible, durable, and dynamic behavior. So through what we discovered is through just material geometry, not only you can use fragile material, but these materials can show extremely dynamic, flexible behaviors if you print them, for instance, in the form of a spiral or a coil. We soon also explore various material formations and expressions of these prototypes to see what kind of coil or what kind of spring forms or non-conventional string forms they could express themselves. So just kind of to recap this section, I'm looking at both morphology and behavior of materials. In terms of morphology, I'm looking at both material properties as well as material geometry. In terms of behaviors, I'm looking at sensing, encoding, and responding behavior. To my mind, integrating emerging technologies into the environment shouldn't just be seen as an end itself, but as a means of addressing larger psychosocial issues. And this somehow reflected in my work, Rest of the Gaze, which is a cape, a multi-material 3D printed cape that is equipped with facial tracking camera, and the camera can see onlookers' gaze, and according to where the onlookers is looking, the garment moves and respond accordingly. If you're basically, if you're the wearer, you know which part of your body is being looked at, and if you're the onlooker, you know that your action is being noticed, and it might ward off any sort of unwanted action. This project really sort of change, or I would say that by the fact that computational systems are embedded into the substrate of this garment, could really sort of intervene with social interaction and change the dynamic of the social interaction. This project got extensive media attention, and I would say that to some extent this was interesting for me because I realized that I was sensing or touching upon some sort of very sensitive cultural, historical topic here. And I think from that point, I think the role of the designer was sort of creating or is creating conversation or increasing awareness around the topics that is important in the society. The other part of my research is looking at the use of sensor technologies. As is obvious, I'm using a variety of sensor technologies such as biometric sensors that can track and monitor brain activity of the users, to various kind of computer vision technologies that can read information such as age, gaze, as well as facial expressions of the people in the space. But I'm also interested to use these sensory technologies as a way of addressing larger human-related questions. And I would unpack that in the following sections of my presentation. And in this, I'm particularly inspired by the work of Rose Pickard from MIT Affective Computing Group, which looks at how we can decode information from the human body. Affective computing is about developing systems which can recognize, interpret, and simulate human emotions through simply measuring physiological responses of the users. I was really excited about this, but I also been thinking about this question for a long time, that can computers have emotion? Obviously, this can be a provocative question, and maybe the answer is no, but obviously computers could simulate emotion. So, for instance, when you look at different species, such as mice, cats, and dogs, you can see that they're having different reactions and different behaviors. For instance, mice can bristle their furs when they're intimidated, and this phenomena is also happen in cats and dogs. So they can actually dynamically respond to either emotional information of their surrounding environments. So I've been wondering if our garments could do the same, could become sort of an extension of one's emotional capabilities. This is Opal. Opal is equipped with a facial tracking camera that can track basic emotions such as sadness, happiness, surprise, anger, and neutral, and respond with different type of behaviors with active dynamic behavior. In this case, this dress uses uses silicon and soft robotic system, and through control of pneumatic system, it changes and moves accordingly. These are some of the sort of production of this piece, which was about embedding fiber optics into the sheet of acrylic, and then later on putting in the silicone and allowing the silicone surface to sort of cure. And the result was fair-like surface that it was act as a wearable. The production was this project was absolutely labor-intensive and to some extent surgical, as you can see in some of these pictures. So it was kind of very, very interesting custom-made fabrication process that we sort of produced for this project. Oops, sorry. Would just kind of like to add here that the application of such smart garments could be for people, for instance, that they could suffer from some form of autism, that they might look at you and they might realize that you're having some sort of emotion, but they have difficulties understanding what is that emotion exactly. This type of a smart garment could potentially help those people to respond more in line with their social surrounding. As I've been really fascinated by this notion of affective computing and emotional computing, and I also took a series of computer science classes to understand how computer scientists would look at notion of emotion, how computer scientists compute emotion, really. I also did series of workshops at Adidas headquarters, both in Germany as well as here in Portland in US, which I was teaching their designers for how to integrate technology into their design. And after one of my public talks, one of the group came to me and they wanted to work with me to explore how we can use such systems for developing a very much more like a unique, engaging experience for customers. Especially if they're going to showcase one of their concept product, let's say a concept shoe, how are we gonna sort of create this bonding emotional experience? For me personally, this project was an excuse to think about how we can think about interaction as a way of creating persona or a character. How can we create an engaging experience by exploiting almost the notion of anthropomorphism? If we can detect specific users and their facial expressions, could we develop a narrative or a story through the interaction between those characters and the character of the object? This piece is fabricated using series of, in the form of a ball, with series of pentagon and hexagons that they robotically fabricated and assembled together, with series of holes that also hold series of acrylic tubes. And you can see in these pictures that how they basically come together. From inside, LED panels allow the piece to be illuminated from inside, and very much inside this display case, the concept shoe is located on a motorized platform that allows the concept shoe to sort of moves and rotate and give it different characters to the shoe. These images, the object inside is just a mock-up because I couldn't actually show the actual piece because it was under NDA. But for me, was as a designer, was interesting to think about the ways that we unfold a story. Like if we treat this object as a character, how this object would behave if it doesn't see anyone. Does it go to a sleeping mode or dream mode? And how that objects come out of the dream mode and start kind of detecting the people's faces. What if the people's faces are, for instance, neutral or smiling or surprised? And how can we develop different type of behaviors through the interaction with the users? In this case, when the pieces recognizes your face, it recognizes you by sort of creating different pattern of lights. If it recognizes you're happy or excited, the shoe inside start to move and react in different behaviors. The other project that actually, I realized this video didn't play, but I can, oh, it does. Fascinating moment about this piece was when audience in front of the piece, when there are multiple people standing in front of the piece, they had to sort of almost compete for attracting the attention of the audience. Otherwise, the sort of the shoe inside start to kind of distributing the attention to multiple people as though it's confused and doesn't know exactly. So it actually created a very engaging experience when multiple people were in front of the piece. You would almost feel like you're standing in front of a pet and the pet doesn't know to whom they should give their attention. Within the similar vein of work, I was also commissioned by Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago for producing a piece for their fashion technology show called Wire to Wear. This is iridescence. Iridescence is basically a color which is inspired by hummingbirds' feathers. Hummingbirds are amazing creatures that changes their color of their feathers from dark green to pink in order to attract a mate with a twist of their head. So I've been really fascinated to see how materials could show a similar color changing and shape changing behaviors. In particular, I was interested to see how we could produce these materials and their behaviors in-house. And the reason was this project was really challenging. It was a commission for a science museum that it was running 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. At least every day, and summers there were even longer for the period of 1 year. So I had to make sure that the system is going to be robust enough and durable enough that can sort of last for this period of time. So me and my team worked on this project to make sure that we can produce a very simple mechanism that doesn't use off-the-shelf products, because those off-the-shelf product has a lot of gears and motor systems. We wanted to produce something which is very simple, using electromagnetic force in order to flip from one side to another. So the design and developments of this project went through a series. It was extremely labor intensive and iterative, and went through many different prototypes and studies. But the intention was also being able to provide series of very easy instructions for the team at museum, or the technician of the museum. So if one of the actuators stops working, they can easily dismantle or take out that actuator and put a new piece in. So it was really a lot of work put into making sure that every piece is possible to remove and replace with a new piece. This was also one of the projects that not only the hardware, but software, electronics, and every aspect of this project was custom made. It was 250 actuators that they move and rotate in one axis. And it was extremely labor intensive, as you can see in the video, in terms of the soldering and amounts of electrical components that it was basically embedded inside this piece. It was about 250 actuators, 4 microcontrollers, 40 driver boards, and many different components that basically they were all embedded inside the piece. It also has a computer vision, a camera that you're seeing right now, that the camera sees the people, their emotional expressions, and according to what kind of emotional expression they're expressing through their face, the garments respond. And actually, not only just emotional expression, but also where people are standing in front of the piece. So if the angry face is detected, for instance, the piece starts to tremble really fast, almost repelling you from getting closer to the piece. Conceptually, however, this piece is very much inspired by the notion of sensory substitution. I'm really interested to see that what if someone is blind or her eyes are closed? Could that person learn to see the world around through simply just the use of or hearing the environments around her body? Could the person hear facial expressions of the people around, or could the person hear where the people are standing compared to her body? Sorry, one last thing, and sensory substitution, before I play this video, I would like to not talk over it because it's a beautiful sound as well. One of the things about sensory substitution is that it's a concept that has come from neuroscience, but it's really about kind of changing modality that you experience the world. So for instance, seeing through haptic experience is a sensory substitution. And last project that I would like to share is Can the Subaltern Speak, which is a very personal and dear project to me. This project is inspired by intriguing historical mask worn by Bandari women in southern part of Iran. And I'm going to tell you the story of this piece. So this piece is, the history of mask is really fascinating because mask could be used, could take a different type of social, political, and historical roles. And you can see that throughout the history. So I've been really fascinated by the notion of the mask. And this project was, in fact, before the pandemic started. I was working on this project and then a pandemic started. It is inspired by Iranian historical mask, and it's been said that these masks were developed during the Portuguese rule as a way of protecting the wearer from the gaze of master slave looking for pretty woman. Obviously, from contemporary perspective, this could be used as a way of saying that protecting the woman against the patriarchy. At the same time, I was really interested to look at the design of these masks because they cover most of the face except the eye. And I've been thinking about ways that eyes could be used for communication, and what are the ways that we can think about the role of emotive, expressive elements of the eyes. In my research, I came across an interesting incident in which the American soldier Jeremiah Denton managed to send a secret message, torture, through the blinking of his eye using Morse code. That was really fascinating for me when I came across this work, thinking about how you could sort of send a sort of a secret message through the eyes was the moment that this project really kind of clicked for me. And I knew that I'm interested to think about producing a secret message. In this video, basically, Jeremiah Denton was caught in the propaganda video to say during Vietnam-America War to say that he's have all the sufficient food and equipments, but he managed very intelligently to send the word torture using a Morse code. Obviously, the use of the code is nothing new. And during this lockdown, we can see that women used code words, for instance, in pharmacy to request or ask for help against the domestic abuse. But the use of language for generating a secret message was something that I've been thinking a lot about. And during this project, I've been thinking that how we could produce a language, how can we produce a secret message? And then I came across another work, a research at Facebook AI Lab, in which the scientists, they were trying to launch an experiment in which two robots start to sort of negotiate with one another. And interestingly, during this experiments, the robot started to develop a language that no human could understand. As you can see, some of the words start to repeat, and it was basically almost sounded nonsensical to the scientists and forced them to stop the experiment and intervene with the algorithm to make sure that everything that is happening in the communication between the two robots, they could understand. What was fascinating for me was this experiment shows that, well, apart from the fact that AI could be used for producing text or language, but also the fact that having sort of knowledge to uncode or decode this information is a power, and inability to have access to the knowledge, it would sort of undermine those that they want to keep the authority. And that was sort of fascinating, another sort of third layer of this project. Here, I'm going to jump into the design process of this project. These masks were designed based on the Langer lines of the human face. Langer lines are the lines of the skin that they're basically minimum tension lines, and those lines are also very influential for the facial expressions. The mask consists of 18 electromagnetic actuators, 3 driver boards, 1 microcontroller, all embedded inside the piece. And each of the actuators are equipped with a fake eyelash, and they give you the illusion that you have been watched by 18 eyes. So part of this project, similar to the previous project, was how to develop a sort of control system for controlling these actuators, but also the piece has a sensor technology that is located above the wearer's eyes, and it can track the openness or closeness of the eyelid of the wearer. And according to that information, the transmission speed of the message would be faster or slower. So all these electronic parts are somehow embedded inside. It was extremely sort of everything super compact and very thin in terms of how they should sort of be located inside. But the other aspects of this project was how we could use machine learning for producing a language or a code message between women. So I've been using machine learning algorithms. These are texts that they might sound nonsensical because they were not written by a human, but they were written by a machine, and using what is known as Markov chain. Markov chain is a common machine learning algorithm for simulating statistically random processes. And I've been really interested to learn more about, for instance, how we could use this machine learning algorithm for producing text, which is purely based on learning from a source data and predicting either in character or word scale what is the next letter. And for the source data, I've been inputting the work of feminist critical thinker Gayatri Spivak, Can the Subaltern Speak? Gayatri Spivak asked us whether it's possible for the colonized to develop a voice under the oppression of the colonizer. And that was really fascinating for me. So I was really interested to see that how we could revisit this text and bring that into the machine learning algorithm to see how the machine produced new iterations of such a text. And you could use this principle either in words scale or in character scales, meaning that what is the probability of a given letter after 3 past letters. And collecting this information, you can produce series of probability and states that you could be used for generating a new type of texts. Every moment, these type of text that is generated through such a system has been sent to the microcontroller, and microcontroller translates or transmit those information to the other mask using BLE protocol. And as the story unfolds between the 2 masks, the n-grams are changing and the sentences getting almost like degraded to something which is really very much abstract. In every given moment, every letter translated to a Morse code, and Morse code basically sent to actuators, and that's how one message will be sent to another masks. So this project really brings sort of critical making and AI and feminism all together. and really trying to address that, although it's speculative, but how could we speculate on ways that we could overcome oppression or patriarchy through developing a secret type of message between women. With that, I'll show the final video, and I won't talk over it. So women, the intention is really to sow anxiety and sort of see how we could develop a new language between the women to give them empowerment for connection and communication. With that, I would like to wrap up by saying that I think the use of the technology shouldn't be seen as a way of simply fetishizing technology because because just technology is cool in a way, but really to use technology and computational system for addressing larger issues. And in this, I'm very interested to learn from the world of feminism, neuroscience, cognitive science, and really see that how the world of design could bring those ideas in a applied way to the world. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to conversations and any questions.
Thank you so much for sharing your amazing work with us. I'm very impressed, and I believe the audience have been really inspired by your amazing work. We already have a number of questions to be answered, so we will just move to Q&A session, and Lindsay Anderson, a student in the architecture program, will moderate the Q&A session for us.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Banaz. I would just like to express my sincere excitement that you're able to join us today. I think your interactive work and your wearable, your smart garments resonates far beyond our architectural bubble. And those achievements, I think, are something that any young architect could aspire to. We have a lot of good questions. I'll start off with one by Shadia Haramio. They ask, how did you transition from a design-trained mind to a sort of artificial intelligence design? You're looking at interesting human factors, and I'm wondering, where does architecture fall in your research? Is it the idea of a design-based trained mind that has led you to where you are in your research, or are there outside factors that have led you to this type of AI-oriented design?
Oh, there's so many things in this question, but I try to answer as much as I can. I think the use of computational tools has been always informing what it means to be architect, right? I also think that in our current era, the more use of advanced computational tool like AI, it's something that it's going to soon be something that it's super important. So it's really up to us in architecture education to how much you put yourself sort of to be informed by those ideas from the world of artificial intelligence, from the recent advancement in technology, I would say. To that end, I'm kind of believing that architecture education should actually go under some change. We need to also train architects not to just design building, but think about designing systems, thinking about design of the human experience. I think in a way we naturally learn some of that. We already, when we design built environment, we already talk about the relationship between the human body to the built environments. But a lot of times those ideas stays in the world of like physical connection between understanding the proportion of the human body to that of built environments. But I also think that getting more into the world of artificial intelligence and computational system could allow us to actually develop more nuanced connection between human and the built environment. So it's sort of a natural transition for me, because I just realized that I'm really interested to learn more about technology and see how I can repurpose it and reuse it to develop a new type of experience, new type of interactions. And yeah, that was sort of my own journey in a way to that world.
Thank you. A question from Ngozi Brown. Are there currently any ethical conversations regarding the use of cameras to gauge others' responses or thoughts? What about misinterpretation of motives? Malcolm Gladwell's recent book, Talking to Strangers, also comes to mind. He somewhat argues that human expression is not as universal as we think. We misunderstand each other quite a bit, including our nonverbal cues. Plus, I think of all the lynchings and unjust criminal charges attributed to people, especially Black men in the US history, based on what people assumed about a sideways glance, etc. How does it benefit us to know that others are thinking, observing, feeling? Why does it matter? Could this be an invasion of privacy?
Yeah, this is a very good question. And I'm really fascinated by the ethical questions around the use of, let's say, computer vision technology and facial tracking. I think there is a lot of, the more we've worked with these systems, the more we realize that a lot of pre-trained data sets, there are a lot of biases of the authors that has been leaked into this type of systems, including systematic racism and sexism that it's been replicated in these type of systems. But because of that, I'm actually really interested to enter into this world of how we could train our own data sets. How could we start thinking about having conversation around the problems that we can see around these systems. And to this end, I have to say, for instance, in Cross of the Gaze, I used a system that was using a facial tracking system that was using the data sets that was supposed to sort of detect the gender. And we know now that, well, gender, you can't detect the gender through purely representational means. That's completely faulty. We can't also think about this sort of binary division of male, female. Therefore, how computer vision can tell you your gender? So I'm actually interested in this conversation, but this doesn't mean that we shouldn't use them or we shouldn't think about them critically. I believe that the more we use this type of system as creative designers, we learn how to understand how these data sets work and how we could bring our own data sets, how we could train our own data sets that allow to act as a form of resistance, or as a way of, or at least move in that direction. And I guess one last thing on this line of thinking is that I think that's why I'm really interested in this sort of active role of creative people that we could be to shape the conversation around the technology. In other words, we don't let just a bunch of people that they're sitting in Silicon Valley and they're deciding what this technology should be trained for. to just train the data sets, but we can actually start having an active voice for saying that what we do want the technology to be addressed. So I'm excited to be in that space, and I'm excited to see that how we could use technology as a way of resistance, how we could see surveillance as a way of resistance as a form of empowerment for women. And we also have to differentiate between just pure notion of surveillance and the governance. Like, who owns the data is completely a different topic. If the data won't be shared with any larger organization and benefit their economical growth, it should be fine and to empower people. So that's very larger, a sort of longer conversation that we could have, but maybe I'll stop here. Maybe there are more questions in that line.
Absolutely. I think there are so many benefits to this work and what it could be used for in terms of women being oppressed. Another question, can you talk about the collaborations, financial, technological, artistic, that help bring these works to fruition?
Sure. I think one of the things that for me happened was when I started doing this type of work was with a very modest budget, with a lot of time, me kind of getting my heads around a lot of different technology, doing it all on my own. And then gradually, as I started building more works that people could see, people could understand, I was getting more commissions. I was getting people that they were interested to work with me, and that was really fascinating. So I guess if I want to say one thing, is really about sort of keep going with your idea, because at some points when those ideas become concrete, you'll be able to fund them. But if you stop and saying that you don't have the funding, you would never make your idea happen, because you're waiting for someone to believe what your abstract idea is. So you have to find a way, to always make that idea to be tangible, and then gradually people see it, and there will be some people that they want to commission that experimental, highly experimental work. So for me, it was that journey, honestly, and sort of following what I just really wanted to do, and not necessarily looking for getting a commission, and even at this point is more like allowing for things to happen, and not necessarily constantly looking that, oh, this should happen. But I'm more interested, honestly, to also do what I am interested in, the ideas that I would like to explore. And it's a good space to be in, to be experimental and not necessarily being dictated by a client's needs as such. So I would like to be in that space more, and I would hope that I can find more commissioned or grant works that allow me to do this type of work more and more.
Thank you. Let's see. A question from a student, Nate Cole. Am I muted?
No, I hear
Oh,
you.
okay. Where do you start when you get a new idea for a project like the ones displayed? Do you have a preferred medium or software to start work, or does this change project to project? And what are the principles you carried over from the architectural design process?
I mean, I guess project by project is slightly different, but I'm also a big believer in hands-on, iterative, process-based making. So a lot of times I don't know what I'm exactly doing, and I find pleasure in not knowing where I'm going. Sometimes it can be frustrating and exhausting, not knowing exactly what it is that you're doing. But I also think that in those moments, I often, when I remind myself that this is part of the process, that you're supposed to not know, I think that really, that is very helpful. So in my projects, typically, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I start from at different points. Sometimes it can start from just purely material explorations, playing with different materials, playing with different designs and use of computational designs, fabricating things. Sometimes with thinking through technologies that they're available in the market commercially, and then thinking through them and thinking about ways that they can be repurposed. And sometimes through reading books, either from feminism or neuroscience or cognitive science, just getting inspired by those ideas. And sometimes it's all these layers together informing what is next.
Are you the director of the videos you produce to introduce these pieces? Would you speak to the students and the rest of the audience about using video as a medium?
Sure. Depends. Some projects I was also the director. I was very fortunate because my PhD was technically in the department in the School of Cinematic Arts at USC. Although we were interdisciplinary media arts, but we were within the larger cinema school. So I actually was very lucky to get to collaborate with some other amazing creative minds that they were from the world of cinema, film directors. So that really all of a sudden opened up new way of thinking about how do you document, how do you think about documentation. So for me, it was less about sort of demoing a technology that I was making and was more about moving toward telling a story. How do you tell a story of a piece in 1 minute was a different type of task that I was never sort of exposed to until I got into cinema school. And to that end, I would say that it would be really helpful to think about ways that you document your project as a way of narrative and storytelling, because that way really you connect with your audience. Also, the other thing which I'm sure you noticed in a lot of my presentation is that I document everything. If you're building something, if you're making something, document. Like leave your camera on and just gather lots of videos and images. Sometimes through watching yourself making something, you discover something which is incredibly interesting. And sometimes you see the potential of something that you're making within either images or videos. So during the process, documentation is very, very important. I often tell my students, make sure your camera is in the right angle, you have the right light. You don't need to think too much like about the creative aspects of it, especially for just documentation of the process. But then when you get to the final outcome, you can always add, you can always think about narrative and storytelling.
Okay, I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. There's one here in the chat that I caught. I kind of had the same question from Brian Holland. There's a long historical tradition that seeks to understand ways in which architecture, or fashion for that matter, can speak. How are you thinking about your work in relation to that longer trajectory of design as nonverbal cultural expression communication?
Like connecting architecture to fashion in that term, or I guess?
I think so, yeah. Yes, as nonverbal expression.
Yeah, I mean, I think from that perspective, you can also see that what happened, for instance, in Bauhaus, which was all the disciplines were one into one another. There wasn't a differentiation between like architecture, fashion design, jewelry design, industrial design, furniture design. There was no such a differentiation. It's such a contemporary things to think about the silos of education. So for me, I'm really feeling free when I can actually change the scale from the scale of like architecture all of a sudden to object size object and all of a sudden to fashion. I see all of these interventions in terms of design sensibility. And I think architecture education from that perspective is slightly in a unique situation because you actually already are starting from larger scale. So it's always easier to go a smaller scale. And because we already have built-in skill sets of spatial understanding, and many more understanding of parameters that contribute to the space, I think it's very easier for us to go to different scales. And yeah, I think I see design and architecture as a bigger umbrella, and I think it's very important to develop this sort of interdisciplinary approach that see all these different forms of design as one. And I do believe that they can follow just one design sensibility. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, okay, I think we can go ahead and, oh, there's one more.
Yeah.
You mentioned using this technology to help people with autism. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so I think the potential of a lot of these type of systems, such as like artificial intelligence, could actually help a lot of people that they suffer from some sort of deficiencies. Either those can be emotional or physical. So I really see sort of, in a way, artificial intelligence as sort of extended intelligence for human, and ways that it can enhance our perception or our social interaction. So in this case, like if we have artificial system that allow us to see emotional expressions of the people, I mean, we take it for granted. We look at each other, we realize that, oh, someone is smiling, might be happy. But a lot of people who suffer from a form of autism, they might look at you, they might realize there is something going on, but they genuinely have difficulties understanding that what does this exactly mean. So such systems that allow for at least some low level, like basic emotions, could allow those people to blend better with their society. Having said that, one of the earlier questions that came up, I really very much appreciated that was, yes, there is certainly this sort of universal emotion is questionable. This is the work that was done by psychologist Paul Ekman from UC Berkeley, who believed that these 6 basic emotions exist among all the cultures, and they persist among all the cultures. So you can question that, obviously, in a bigger picture. Having said that, I think that there are possibilities that we can allow the systems to there are many micro expressions that they're informed by cultural differences, but there are some bigger emotional expressions that perhaps this type of technological system allow us to decode. So there is a certain level of also optimism that we can detect, and we can help these people to some extent, and see this type of technological tools and artificial intelligence as a way of enhancing their perception and their functionality of their being.
Well, thank you so much, Minas, for this tremendously inspiring presentation today. And I think the number of comments and questions that came in through the chat and the Q&A are demonstrating the incredible engagement and inspiration that you've produced in our virtual audience, who you can't see but are here in large numbers today. So allow me, on behalf of all of us in that community, to thank you again for your contribution to our series and for such incredible provocative work. And thank you to Lindsay for expertly managing the Q&A for us today. So thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Thank you very much for having me. It was wonderful to be here. I wish I was there physically. So maybe
perhaps another time in the future.
Yes. please come.
Well, thank you again, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thank you.
joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.